Welcome to the Coaching Debate on the Big Kickoff League of Ireland channel. My name's Roy Shanahan, and over the course of this year we'll be debating any and every topic relating to football, coaching and management at all levels. So don't be afraid. Send in your questions to the Big Kickoff 96.4 at gmail.com and we'll run them past some of the best football coaches around. And that's the perfect link to introduce some of our panel this week. Well, I might introduce all my panel. Firstly, we have coach educator Larry Mahony, who is now also an author with his books Let the Players Play and Move the Ball. Welcome on, Larry.
Thanks, Roy.
Joining Larry is former Cobh Ramblers boss Stephen Henderson, who also was head of youth development at Shelbourne. Welcome, Stephen. And last but very not least, Gary Daly from Training 1-to-1, who specialises in one-on-one and small group training, and you can find them on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube, so check them out. Okay, so what we're going to do, the layout is we're going to throw out a topic there and I will send it out to the coaches and we'll see what they have to say and we can talk about it and debate. Okay, so it seems the very first episode of the Coaching Debate, the very first topic is, and we're going to start with you, Larry. What makes a good coach?
Well, I think it's the obvious ones, Roy, there. I think, first of all, understanding of the game is obviously important. I think then after that, it's ability to communicate. Stephen,
you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much wraps it up there. It's not just having a good understanding of the game, but it's how you transfer that understanding to the players that you're coaching, or even the coaches that you're coaching. So yeah, so it's having a really good understanding of the game, educating yourself, and then how you can transfer that to your players.
Okay, Gary, I'll let you finish on that one before we move on. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I agree with the two lads, and I'd probably add kind of openness to it in terms of wanting to learn. We sometimes find we think like when players get older that we think that we can't teach them things, and then you kind of would wonder what's the point of being a coach because we're older than players are. So I'd say, especially as a coach, being open to new ideas, it's a massive thing as well.
Yeah. Okay, Stephen, what are the worst things that you've seen a coach do? What are the things that grind your gears about coaches?
Just actually going back to what Gary said there, it's the coach that thinks the player should know something. It's like I've had these conversations with coaches when we talk about certain aspects. He should know that, and you're saying, why should he know that? Because there's an assumption that somewhere down the line he was told it. Where I always kind of felt the assumption should be that they weren't, and basically when you're watching them, they weren't. Do you know what I mean? So and there's certain coaches out there that have a specific topic they want to coach. Predominantly, they want to do the fancy stuff. And, it's no coincidence that even now in this day and age, I believe the art of defending is dead. I don't think it happens anymore. Some of the goals I'm seeing, particularly at League of Ireland level, are absolutely horrendous. And I think that's something that irks me, because it makes you feel, or people would make you feel old school by standing up and saying, hang on a minute, lads, we have to defend as well. So, we have to put time into defending, but they should know that I want to play to the 5, to play to the 6, to play out wide, to play into the 10, to play into the 9 to finish it. Yeah, great. You'll get your little 20 seconds of TikTok. All right. But just 7 months of heartache behind that couple of seconds of TikTok. So I think it's these boys that just want to concentrate on the fancy stuff, and as I think Lara and Gar kind of stipulated at the start, it's having a real good understanding of the game and having the ability to coach all facets of that game and give these players as much information and stop assuming they know, because they want to know.
Yeah, okay. Larry, you're a coach educator, so what are the common traits or habits that coaches get into that kind of it's a stumbling block for them?
How long have you got, Roy?
Many thousands, as long as you want.
Many thousands of things that you want to talk about. I think, speaking in very general terms and backing up exactly what Stephen said, I think there's been, now it was always been this way, but I think there's very much so that there's a modern thing now about how the game should be played and coaches have this idea of how the game should be played, and it doesn't necessarily relate to the players that they're working with. I see it all the time now. I see people, and you've heard me say this before. I've seen guys trying to put Barcelona sessions on with under 11 D players, and this seems to be really, really common now. That coaches want to do the best for their players, and they want to do what they think is the best. But coaches need to realize that it's really, really important to be able to see what's in front of your eyes. It's really important to be able to see what the problems are on the field, because coaching is all about sorting out players' problems. It's sorting out things that stop the team playing well together. It's sorting out things, just as Stephen said, for example, the defending. The coach has got to, I see a lot of young coaches, and what he's saying about playing for the 6 to the 10 and all this, it's bullshit. Like, when you're talking to a group of players who probably can't put 2 or 3 passes together. You see, but I see that happening all the time now, right? And I see, again, it's probably a function of my age now at this stage anyway, but I'd have to back up what Stephen's saying in terms of the defending, right? That people are obsessed with playing like Manchester City or playing like Liverpool, and they don't realise that the work they have to do is in front of them, in front of their eyes, that they have to sort out what's going wrong with their team. And an awful lot of the time now, at all the levels that I see, what's going wrong with a lot of teams is their ability to defend individually and collectively.
Larry, is it a case that when you are a coach, that when you step in, you should be looking at the things that aren't working first before you look at the things that you want to work?
Well, the first thing that you do when you get a team, you've got to evaluate where your players are, Roy. So if you want, we're taught nowadays not to couch things in negative terms, not to say things negatively like that. So rather than saying things that are going wrong or things that we need to improve on, right? But it's to see the most. It comes with experience in seeing the most important thing first, whatever that may be. It may be people giving away possession all the time. It may be defenders letting people run in behind them all the time. It may be midfielders trying to force play all the time. But whatever the most important thing is, experience teaches the coach to be able to identify what that is and then go and sort it out.
Absolutely. Okay, Gary, up at training 1-2-1, you do great individual sessions, but when you are taking on a coach, what is it that you look for, and what is it that would turn you off a coach?
I think someone has to share what you see in football and why you want, I suppose, why you coach. And for me, it's the game, and it's also the person aside from that. So big one for me is someone who I can get on with and deal with, and who will share values with me, but also not be too agreeable in the same breath. And they have to then be able to have that relationship with players where essentially they can motivate the player, they can engage with the player in that sense. Just going back a step to what Stephen said, and it's kind of a personal anecdote for me when he talked about defending, is from working I also work with a team as well, and we found when we didn't have the ball that I think this kind of has happened in modern football, where you have your defensive midfielder just kind of shadows and screens players, and then me and the head coach kind of got together and we were like, we have 2 centre halves against 1 centre forward. Why do we need this midfielder sitting there doing another job? So it is that idea where it's almost demonized a bit, that idea of good defending play. People see it as, it's poor attacking play, rather than actually complementing what is good defending. And I think that's a massive way we're gone. It's almost, and again, as Larry said, people are trying to put on sessions they probably see on Twitter with their under 10 C or D team, when it's just not what's on front. I just wanted to re-emphasize about them points as well.
Yeah, no,
there's one thing there, Roy. Again, depending on the level that we're talking about, and again, this is a BMI bonnet. I've spoken to you about this before. Depending on the level that you're working at, if you're working at developing players, I cannot see how players, until they reach senior football, will be shaped into a specific role in terms of being a defensive midfielder or an attacking midfielder. I think, and I know I sound like Johnny Giles on this one, and we're starting to look like each other, myself and Johnny, right? But I think midfield players, I think at a young age, when players are developing, they must be taught to be able to do both sides of the game. Midfielders have got to be able to. What's their basic job? Their basic job is to connect up the two lines of the team, the defense and the attack. So they should be able to play, but also as well, their main job is to protect the defense behind them. So they should be able to defend as well. So players who can only, I know tactically this works at the highest level, but from a player's development point of view, putting them into a box or her into a box at an early age, I don't think that helps the player's development at all.
Okay. And the others want to work off that?
Yeah, because I'd agree with that, because, you know, I fell into it there earlier. I think one of the worst things that's happened with modern day football is putting a quintessential position on the number. They don't talk positions anymore. They talk numbers. You know, the number 10. Yeah. You know what I mean? The number 6 or whatever you want to call him, is 4 or a 6, the defensive midfield player. You know, in relation to development, like, me and Larry will get bombed off this show because, like, you know, we're coming from an era where football is football, and it's a case of midfield players have jobs, and, you know, those jobs, like when I was managing, midfields would win or lose me the game. It's as simple as that. I could not have one midfielder and tell him, look, your job is just to sit there in front of the back four, get on the ball and spray a few nice passes around. And your mate here, your job is to get up, score goals, get back, defend goals, get in and create goals. Do you know what I mean? So there has to be, we have to enhance what the team ethic is. And throughout a football team, there's these little partnerships. And these little partnerships require communication. And I don't think we should be putting players from, say, the kind of 10 to 12-year-olds up even to under 4. I don't think they should be defensive midfield players. I don't think they should be boxed into as a defensive midfield player. I think they should be taught to play the game on the merits of how the game is transferred in front of them. So in other words, when you have to defend, yeah, you're behind the ball. And when we're going attacking, one of us is going to make a third man run if that's on. And one of us will hang up and we'll pick up that and that comes back out of the box. And strip it back and go back to the basics. And I think we've gone away from teaching players the basics of the game. And the basics of the game is how you play it on the merits of the game. We can't go and teach playing out from the back on a pitch like Daly, for instance. If you look at what's happening in Talca Park, Shells are after giving away so many goals playing square passes on a pitch that is not sustainable for that type of football. So we have to play the game on its merits. So I think we have to stop pigeonholing players at young ages and putting them in CDM, attacking midfield players, the number 10 and all this lad coming in, inverted wide players. Do you know what I mean? Let's strip it back to the basics, teach the kid the basics. And when they understand the basics, then allow the flair. Then as they get older, you know, apply their personality into that within a team structure that they're now going to. You know what I mean? I just think
it's the old results versus development debate, Roy. Like, we're talking the League of Ireland, where it's important to win, and at the higher levels of junior football, where it's important to win. Now, that's not saying it's not important to win at every level. Of course, it is. But what's the priority? Your team may be sounder defensively by using a defensive midfield player at 14 or 15. But that player is not going to come out as a fully rounded player when he's 18 or she's 18. And that's the job of you coaches to develop a fully rounded player. Yeah. You know, that can do every part of the game.
I think a big one on that, and it's actually something interesting, where especially when I bring a player into a club environment, I would be very big on playing, and especially as they develop and get older towards like your 16, 17, 18, about playing across two units. So either playing, let's say, if they are centre mid and being able to play as a fullback, I find that's massively important, especially as you get to a first team setup. You might get your chance because of an injury at right full, but you're stronger as a centre mid, but that could be your little break in. And then you never know. Like the lad said, if you're not pigeonholed when you're younger, might end up being a great right full. So I think that's massive as well, especially if you can to play across two different, so backline, midfield, or midfield and up front, or whatever it might be.
I don't know whether it's still the case now, but it used to be the case at the Ajax Academy that the players learn to play every position.
Yeah.
They got some experience.
And it's the only way to get a greater understanding of the game, to know what the your left full, if you're a left winger or a centre midfielder, needs, where he wants you. It's
sorry, right? Just in relation to this, like, you know, I feel like I'm been talking about an 8-year-old and a senior League of Ireland player in the same breath there. Just in relation to the steps of the development, and I'd love to hear Larry's opinion on that. Where would you go in relation to 8 to 12-year-olds when, you know, the League of Ireland academies now start are under 14 years of age, right? That's when the League of Ireland clubs academy start. So for me, that's way too old anyway, right? I think you know, they should be having them basically from the start. What would your idea of, if you were hired now by the FAI, where would your emphasis be? Where would you put in terms of player development? What age would you start with? And what would be the process you would use?
Well, the younger the players obviously start with good quality practice, the better. So if you could guarantee me that really all the players will get good coaching at every grassroots club, I would say leave them at the grassroots club. But I don't think that's the case, right? Now, I was lucky enough, I saw Rovers, Shamrock Rovers, now they're doing it right from the bottom up. And I saw their under-9s playing last week, right? And I'm not really aware of the fact whether the other clubs are starting that early or not. But, you know, I always use the argument, if you were living in Manchester or you were living in London, where would the best under-9s be playing? They'd be already at the clubs. They would be getting professional coaching all the time. Now, we've had this thing in recent years about the League of Ireland academies and the underage leagues, right? And what the underage leagues meant was that great schoolboy clubs lost, well, not so much they lost their identity, but they lost their place in the game because they weren't producing they weren't getting the best players. So, and a lot of people are unhappy about that. But the thing about it is, in every other country in the world, it's the professional clubs who look after the development of the young players, of the best young players, of the most talented young players.
That costs money, though, doesn't it, Larry?
Yes, of course it does. And this is the thing about Rovers now. They're putting money into the youngest age groups. Now, I'm not really aware what the other clubs are doing. I'll have to be honest about that, you know. But in reality, what we were talking about for years, like, we were competing with Barcelona because the best kids in Barcelona were playing at the Barcelona Academy, whereas the best players in Dublin were playing at amateur clubs. So I'm really torn between the whole National League thing and the development and the academy thing, because these were great clubs, but I don't think they should have been as powerful as they were. I think all the way through, I think the League of Ireland clubs, to be honest, our approach, well, not our approach, but the way we thought when I was working for the FAI in coach education, the League of Ireland clubs were getting away with murder because they weren't putting anything into youth development, because they were creaming off the players that are under 18s. So I think it's a good thing that the kids, that the National League clubs now are more or less being forced to take the younger players in. But
is it a case,
it has to be done properly. It has to be done properly. That's the thing. If you could guarantee me that the coaching is going to be better and the facilities are going to be better and the habits that they learn and the discipline that they get at the professional club is going to be better, well, then I'd say, yeah, just the National League club should be taking the lead in youth development.
Yeah, but there's a lot of them who have links now to clubs as well. So instead of setting up their own under 8s, 9s youth academies, they're stepping in with other clubs, and I'm not so sure about helping, and that's where it needs to work. They need to have, if it's St. Pat's and they're working with a club, they need to be getting their coaches in. They need to be get coaches down there educated and, as you said, develop a certain level of player if that's not the case, then they need to do it on their own. So I think you're right.
Yeah, and the thing about this debate, Roy, this has taken the direction that every debate goes on about coaching. It's about the best players.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about the best players and bringing the best players through.
Well,
but the best players are only 1%.
Let me ask the next question, Larry. The next question that we have on is, should all teams follow the FAI directive, play 4-3-3 and look to play out from the back? Now, when I seen that directive, I seen that that's a directive for focused on the best players, if you want. We all say elite players and all that, but the top players. And we had a little discussion there, Stephen had a little discussion as well about players and yourself who aren't at that level. So is the focus not on football in general around the country, but really just those top players?
Well, I'll jump in there if you don't mind, right? Because what I've seen in the short period of time and why I wanted to get into the younger age group after the senior football, I wanted to see what was happening down there. And the reality is that the best players at this age group aren't the best players at that age group. And we have this mindset. You see, like, a blind man on the street will spot a really talented young player. Do you know what I mean? So they're in your face. What we have to try and identify are these players. And one of the things I really noticed was that the fundamental motor skills that players, when we brought that into Shells, the difference in some of these players that were passed off as bad players, but it was just that they hadn't got their bearings right in relation to their athletic composition. They just hadn't got their bearings right, and they looked poor players. But when we started introducing physical literacy programs to there, and we started to develop these players, all of a sudden, there was a different look there. So, I think we're too focused on trying to find these players that have a natural ability. And we dismiss the players that look awkward. When in reality, these are the boys that we should be noticing and saying, hang on a minute, this kid could be good. Let's put programs in place. Let's not dismiss any kid until 15 or 16. And there's a reason why I say that, because I've seen it with lots of players, my own son included, in relation to the growth sports. The growth sports, I had lads coming from Shells under 13. They'd have to leave for the year. They came back around their 15. They're at their ground 2 feet. You know what I mean? They're literally at their ground 2 feet. And there's no way any athlete can perform at any kind of top level whilst their body is going through that. But what we can do in terms of bringing in athletic development modules in relation to player development, the actual national plan, that this has to come in our under 8s. And this is where I believe grassroots clubs have a huge part to play and continue to have a huge part to play. That this is where these can really excel by getting the programs in at the grassroots clubs, and they become part of the national development program, not just with the not just with League of Ireland teams. That everybody has a plan to work with, and these are the different stages that we work on it. You know what I mean? And obviously they have to go to the League of Ireland, because the League of Ireland is the professional league, and that's where the kids will get showcased more. Do you know what I mean? So, like, when we're putting on, when the schoolboy clubs are getting upset, maybe they have a right to be upset. But if you sit the kid down and you say, you want to play for X or do you want to play for Y, they'll go for the League of Ireland team every time, because they see that as a natural progression, and there is a natural progression. But what we have to try and do, I believe, is just try and come up with a national plan that starts at 8 years of age. Do you know what I mean? And it's not always about football. I think Gar said it right. We have to start putting in these programs that develop them athletically and give them the confidence, because confidence is a huge thing, believe it or not. Well, you would know that. Even at 9 or 10 years of age, that these kids, when they start to run that little bit better, when they're starting to walk that little bit taller, they feel that. And then you're starting to get a player. So, there's so many different ways that we develop players. And it's not always through just playing football. It's about putting them in an environment that allows them to grow, both mentally and physically, and then having the capability to play the game. And there's loads of time for them to learn to play the game. There's not loads of time for us to give them the ammunition to play the game.
Yeah, Gary, you must see that when you're in your training sessions. You'll have kids of the youngest age going through all the way through to League of Ireland or just top, Premier football in the DDSSL. You must see that those changes, how they affect them, and how they can progress.
Yeah, and a big thing, I think, especially when you deal with a player sometimes in a one-on-one sense, is you kind of can build that trust with a player where, especially when you get players who've been let go from clubs, whether it's some lads come back from England and can be very disillusioned and whatnot, and even younger players getting let go from League of Ireland clubs for whatever reason. And yeah, like Stephen said, it's sometimes the reasons and the feedback players are given, it's all about the kind of X's and O's of football, the whole tactical side of things, whatnot, where Stephen's kind of hit at a more well-rounded approach. And even to reference the directive, you said the two things in it, playing a 4-3-3 and the second playing up from the back, are two like X's and O's concepts of football, which is the small, in my opinion, is the smallest part. It should be about teaching principles in terms of when we have the ball, don't have the ball, and things like that. Like you look at a 4-3-3, our senior international team hasn't played a 4-2-3 in over a year, I don't think.
What happens if you have two central strikers that are really, really good and play really well together? What happens? A word that hasn't been heard in an awful long time. What happens if you have a kid who's a natural sweeper? To give you the two extremes at the different ends of the pitch, you've got to shape your team in terms of what the abilities of the players. You've got to shape your team to give the group of players that you have their best opportunity to shine. Whereas telling you to play a certain formation, by the way, anytime I've seen it, and I don't see it that much, but anytime I see it, it never looks like 4-3-3 to me. It always looks like 4-5-1.
Yeah.
It never looks like It never ever looks like 4-3-3 to me. Right? All the emerging talent stuff and that I've seen, like we don't. I don't think we trust the wide players to stay up front and be front players, and I don't think we have the midfield mobility to cover for those three players playing up front. We want our players coming back all the time. It never ever looks like 4-3-3 to me.
Yeah, I think what Stephen said, from underrates up the national plan, it should be create the environment that facilitates like player welfare in terms of dealing with rejection, things like that, physical development, growth spurts and all that kind of stuff, maturation, obviously technical stuff, contact time on the ball. Like they're more of the foundation. The tactical stuff can be like formations are, like Larry said, are like you watch Man City now, they can play 3 different formations in a 20-minute window. Like it shouldn't be the be all and end all from an association, in my opinion. I strongly agree with what Stephen said. It should be a plan to create an environment that develops people, players, and gives them that chance by keeping them with their self-confidence and whatnot, keep them in the game as long as possible, and then ready for them chances if they do get it. Because it's the hardest career in the world for anyone who has made it, would say.
Yeah, so it looks like, Stephen, that we're saying that you shouldn't play 4-3-3 like the directive is said. You shouldn't play out from the back if your players aren't capable of playing out from the back. So why would there be that kind of short-sightedness within a professional outfit?
They're only thinking of the elite players. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Larry, because I would have got myself into trouble there. You go ahead.
They're only thinking of the elite players. Everything is geared to the highest level. Everyone is looking at the highest level. There's only 1% or 0.5% of players who play at the highest level. It's geared to that. And, I've said this before other times. If I can get my team in green shirts to be passing to another green shirt and move the ball to another green shirt down the field, I'd be quite happy at a certain level. Like, it depends on the level you're playing at. Yeah. Like 99% of coaches, right, they would be happy to get that to happen. And they have players who would not aspire to much more than that, right? But the directive is coming down from above. We should build from the back. We should play 4-3-3. We should look like Manchester City. But we're not Manchester City. We're Irish. And the whole debate is weighted too far in favour of the highest level. Right? It's what Stephen said earlier. I always say this to coaches. And again, you've heard me say this, Roy. Your granny could be a scout for Manchester United. Right? Because the only player who's going to sign for Manchester United is the fella, your granny goes down to the field and see us getting the ball and beating the other 9 players on the pitch and sticking the ball in the net. These are the players that are going to play at the highest level. But these are the players that everything is aimed at, that people are talking about all the time. Everyone is talking about elite. All I hear all the time is elite, right? And again, and that's sort of manifested itself in the Manchester City YouTube video thing. Like seeing Pep. Well, I saw Pep doing this, right? Yeah. And then I'm going down the field in Arklow, and I'm playing with a D team. I'm coaching a D team, and like it's just a different world.
It's aimed at the 1% of players, really.
Of course it is. But the modern culture has led to that now. And again, I'm waiting for your first text to use the word dinosaur, right? You should give a prize for the first dinosaur thing. But I honestly believe this is the effect of the internet. Everyone knows everything now.
Yeah.
Right? Every coach knows everything. Everyone is seeing as Barcelona train. Everyone knows about rotating in midfield, right? And all this obsession with rotating in midfield, I don't see many teams at the highest level even doing that. But I've seen coaches on the side of the pitch when there's a goal kick in an under 12 game shouting, "Rotate!" and the 3 midfield players change places, right?
And get marked by the same players that the other players.
Exactly. And the ball goes into midfield and it doesn't end up going into the front because people. Again, I'm jumping from one thing to the other, but you know this, Stephen. In the coaching, at one time, we were at the forefront of trying to convince people to play from the back. Right? When football in this country was a battle, it was about kicking long and fighting and getting second balls and winning the ball in the air and winning tackles. I can remember a stage where we were trying to get people to play out from the back. Right, and not being very successful in convincing them to do it, right? But now I think it's gone the opposite way. I think people have become obsessed with playing at the back. They've forgotten that the idea of building at the back is to present forwards with good quality service rather than hitting it up around our ear. We try and get ourselves space at the back so we can deliver the ball into forwards, quality passes into forwards or into midfield. But people have lost sight of that. I see people going backwards all the time now. Young players going back all the time because they think they should keep possession when really what they should be doing is penetrate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no arguments there. I think when I seen those directives coming out force, you had the Pats and the Rovers. Everybody was playing 4-3-3, and it was the team who had the best players. Yeah. Won the league, and they won it well because these players could play 4-3-3. And I watched other teams trying to play 4-3-3, trying to play out from the back, and they're getting beaten 6 and 7-0. And I remember watching the match. It was actually Shells playing Bray. It was, and the Shells players tried to play the 3 Bray forwards. We're standing on the edge of the 18-yard box from a kick out in a sprint position. Because they knew they weren't going to kick the ball over their head. They knew they weren't going to try and play through them. They just knew that the goalkeeper was going to kick it to the centre half at 6 on the edge of the 6-yard box. And the goalkeeper, bang, 3 boys, bang. 2 seconds later, a kick out is a goal. Tip off. And it promoted that kind of stuff. And you're saying to yourself, no, that's not development. This is not development. This is not teaching kids how to play the game. What really could be happening there is that these 3 boys are now in sprint positions, right? That means there's space somewhere else. So a good coach will be telling them, now let's exploit the space there. But they weren't. They want to try and play our way out of trouble. And they were continuously getting themselves into trouble. And it was always farcical. I always felt it was farcical because you want a club, say, a club may have a philosophy that runs through, as Lara was saying earlier about Ajax, right? They have this philosophy. They're all their teams play through. You don't have the whole bloody country playing the same system. Do you know what I mean? You don't have the whole bloody country playing the same system.
They play through, Stephen, because they play through because they have the best young players in Holland.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like
I'm
you
saying
said,
that's the other way. We're here
the
over
ancient
here.
Greek league, what
Yeah.
you said there, you put your finger on it. The ancient Greek league, you know who won the ancient Greek league? The team that had the best players.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
And the Roman league and the Abyssinian league, it was always the team that had the best players. That's an ancient truth. Right? And look, that's the way it is, and that's the way football is. And you go at the younger levels, more so, like the team with the best players are going to win. But you've got to teach all the players. This is the thing that people are forgetting. You've got to teach all the players. And what you're saying is 1000% correct. Because no way, in any way, in no one will ever convince me that giving goals away by trying to play in a dogmatic way is good football. No way is that good
football. For the players, lad. It's not good for the players who are consistent. And the poor goalkeepers, I'd say half the League of Ireland goalkeepers have retired at this stage. Well, you know what I mean? It's some of it is.
Don't get me started on the goalkeepers now. That's another rant. There's another rant there.
Gary, you were looking to jump in there.
I was just gonna say, Larry made the point about why you would play out from the back. People forget why you want to do it, for example, and it's individual to your team. You do it to bring a team up the pitch towards your goal, to leave space behind them, and then that whole idea of a long pass isn't actually. I don't see it coached a lot anymore. Like you think every training session, it's your small little rondos in a 20 by 20 box, and the pitch is a hell of a lot bigger than that, and we probably don't coach. And it's a whole different dimension to coach that idea of a long pass where you're finding someone's feet or space or whatnot. So, and then like Stephen said, if you're telling your players to play out when you can see they're herring to press you on the edge of your box, you're not teaching the kids a decision to make. You're saying you just do it anyway. Well, what about these three guys who are standing there? Right? No, you just do it anyway. You know, it is bizarre to think about it, but we should teach them when to do it, why they're doing it, so they're not just doing it for the sake of it, and then give them the how. If they're up on the pitch, you teach where the space might be for your keeper to play direct into or whatnot, or if the team drop off, then you might decide, right, they've dropped off, that's like our trigger to play, like things like that, not just going, we'll do it anyway, no matter what. You know, you have to teach the kids.
And the bizarre thing is that they're asking us to do that with the kids and teach the kids, but I'm looking at £1 million footballers and clubs worth billions forcing their players to do it week in, week out, whether it's a Burnley or a Southampton, and they're getting eaten up by the bigger clubs. Again, as Stephen said, I think the new tactic, if you want to call it, even though it's not a new tactic, everyone in the world is getting good at pressing now and cornering people in and making traps and stuff like that, when we don't really need to. But
I'm sorry now, you shouldn't be saying that to a Manchester United supporter like me now. Right?
It's probably who I was aiming at.
But the thing about it is, though, as well, Roy, and people just wouldn't believe this. Like, it's amazing how professional football and professional clubs and even professional coaches who should know better just follow fashion.
Yeah.
Before Barcelona started taking centre backs, started dropping back level with the goalkeeper in Barcelona, no one did it. No one did it.
And now because you do it, you're not Barcelona.
Yeah, but now everyone does it. They just follow fashion, and you're right. Sure, Fulham went down the year before last, right? And they gave 2 or 3 goals away every single game by trying to play out in the back, by giving the ball away in their own half. And again, I come back to this: giving the ball away in your own half, no matter what your philosophy is, and I hate using that word, the E word, right? Philosophy. It's a long way from philosophy. I was rare, but anyway, right? No matter what your philosophy is, giving the ball away in your own half is not good football.
Yeah. And we're supposed to be creating options for young players to then decide which is the best option for them. And now we're creating no options for them and making them look stupid. So I think we're all in agreement there that we need to open our mind a little bit there. Okay, we're going to go on to the next question. It's a tweet that I seen from Shane Smith. Shane's a coach. He's with the GAA as well. 2 non-negotiables for children in sport. A, no child should be a sub every week. B, every child should be afforded equal game time. Stephen, you start on that one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we talk about development, and we the real development happens on the football pitch. That's where they learn. And like what we're saying, the learning comes through the decisions that these young players make. And if they're not getting the game time to do that, well, then they're never going to improve. And I see League of Ireland clubs doing that as well. And I had an argument once with it over it, that if I see a League of Ireland team not giving this player an opportunity, and he feels that, oh look, he's probably not up to this standard, I don't think that's the player's fault. I think that's the coach's fault on two fronts. One, he was the one who signed them, so you obviously can't identify a player. And two, if you're seeing something in him, then you don't have the capabilities to make him better to step into your team. So I don't blame this on the player. I blame that on the coach. I do think there is a stage within life that you have to earn the right to play in the team. I think around under 17s, you have to start earning the right. That's where I think, you still have to be guaranteed a certain amount of game time, but there has to be consequences for your actions. I don't think kids can fall into it. Oh, I'm going to get me half an hour next week. I'm going to get me an hour next week. I think at some stage they have to learn that football in itself, and particularly at the high level, if that's their goals and that's where they want to achieve, well, then they have to accept that there's standards that you have to achieve week in, week out. But definitely, as we go through the process of the kids matured and going through the 14s and the 15s, they have to be given the opportunity to grow, to deal with all these changes in their body. And then you can start judging them at 17, because they've more or less gone through the worst of it. They've had a whole kind of decade of education in terms of technical development, in terms of physical development, and now the mental development part is you have to learn how to deal with not being picked. You have to learn how to deal with that. What is the effects that has on you? Are you going to drop away and feel sorry for yourself, or get your mum and dad to ring the manager? Or are you going to say, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And fix it yourself. And that player will ultimately become better. But that's obviously at the older age groups, and it's really important, particularly at National League level. But without a shadow of a doubt, there's absolutely no excuse for kids not to be getting the same amount of game time. Absolutely no excuse for it.
Yeah, Gary, what age do you think that, as Stephen said, players should start to have, or should have, that realization that they can't just walk onto a pitch? They have to start earning it. What age is that it should start?
It'd probably be similar enough to Stephen. It's like that 16-year-old, so under 17 player, that would be. I think from obviously the minute they start playing up until that kind of age, it should be even game time. And obviously the other point that's important there is actually that they do start. They're not just the one who gets brought on all the time. They rotate between a starting player or not, because again, players have to learn. There's a difference between being a player who comes off the bench and starts a game. I'd probably say about 16. It is a massively important lesson, because that's kind of the thing. When you're always given game time, it's they know it's always there, and there's no consequence whether they turn up and do nothing in training. Or I've even know people who, some of the players don't turn up at training at some schoolboy clubs, and then just comes and has to get what X amount of minutes. So yeah, there should be consequences at some stage.
How do you deal with that? Yeah, because like if you have someone who is like that and is taken to Michael, do you still give him that game time? Do you still give?
So I'm going to put myself in a situation where, let's say it's obviously quite a young age, let's say whatever, another 10 to another 12-year-old. I think the conversation has to come to a parent and be like, well, how I would probably deal with it would be, well, I can't start him if he doesn't turn up for, let's say we have 2 training sessions. If he never turns up for them 2 training sessions, then I would probably make that a non-negotiable in the group, where it's like, obviously, if there's no reason he's just not showing up, then that player can't start. And then until he changes that habit, he's not going to get that starting. And I know that kind of contradicts what I said a couple of minutes ago, but I don't think you can always just let people away and let parents away with these things. The conversations have to be had and explain your reasoning. Don't just not play the kid all the time, and then 6 months down the line they go, well, he hasn't started a game in 6 months. You pull the parent and the player and you explain your reason. I can't start him if he's not showing up to 2 training sessions, when there are kids who are making that effort. I think if you explain the rationale, that's obviously helps a lot. At least that way you've aired your thoughts on the issue,
Yeah, Larry, communication's key in these situations, isn't it?
Yeah, I sort of disagree a little bit with the lads. You can only speak from your own experience, and the last team I took sort of all the way up, which is a good while ago now. It was actually young Scales that's playing for Celtic now. It was his team. Up to under 10, everyone had equal game time. I think up to under 10 in Wicklow at that time, that was an Arkle Town team, and they had whatever way it worked out, we were able to work it out mathematically that everyone got the exact same amount of time, and they did that to under 10. Right now, I think at that time they probably moved to 11 aside at 11 years of age. I think it was. I could be wrong. It may have been under 12. And again, you can only go by. I think each group is individual. Like that, every single group will be different. But my feeling then was the players could understand this. Right now, you know, I know the lads are talking about 16, 17, but my feeling then, and it probably hasn't changed much, that the players know the story, even at that young age, right? They know when they're being treated fairly or not. Now, it's not fair if that guy doesn't turn up training and he gets playing minutes ahead of a fella who has trained twice a week. And I think the kids have a natural feeling for that. Okay, and of course there'll be exceptions to that, but I think they need to, it depends on what it's based on, though. It can't be just based on ability. If you see what I mean, you can't just play the best players.
No, and what about players who turn up training every week? And I'm kind of in agreement with you, Larry. I'm thinking in around the under 14, under 13 age group, because that's what I found with a number of teams, that at that stage then it wasn't that they wouldn't be getting, you know, 5 minutes here or 10 minutes there. That's not the case. But they may very well be getting just, you know, just less than a half or whatever, if they weren't putting it in training. Or if
as long as everyone understands that. I remember specifically a parent coming to me once and saying, why is he not playing? And I said, I'll tell you why he's not playing, because he's just not trying as hard as everyone else. He's coming up and he's messing. All the other lads are trying their best and he's messing. And the parent turned around and said, well, that's fair enough. Couldn't really say anything else to that, you know.
All
but
things being equal, though, if everyone's working hard on the same page.
Yeah, of course.
Agreement,
I think it's important as well that we have a good understanding of the background of the family before we make kind of decisions like that on 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds.
That's what I'm saying, Stephen, about every situation is different.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Everything is different, and some clubs are small clubs where you'll have a really kind of in-depth knowledge of that community because you don't have that many teams, and then you can go to the bigger clubs where that kind of holistic approach is not kind of been used there. There's no real understanding of what the player is going through. I've seen that a few times where, you know, they're not showing up for training, and then you actually find out why they're not showing up for training, and then now you become a support mechanism for that player. Yeah. And the reality of it is that when he plays that match on a Saturday, it's actually some form of release for that young player. And we have an obligation to look after players in that way as well. Because I don't think we should be ramming down, should we be winning trophies under 12s, 13s and 14s. I don't think that's really relevant. Yeah, if you get them, great, and what have you. But I just think it's for us as coaches that if we can have a look at the player, understand the player, understand the family, understand the background, you know, and then work towards that. You know, we're going to get good players out of it. And the reality is that whatever this player is going through, someone within that group knows that. They know that. So again, Lara's on the money. Like, you know, players are, you know, they see this kid coming up and he's playing. They probably have a good understanding, but we have to be there as a support mechanism for them. So, you know, I'm no genius at this by any stretch of the imagination, but we try to do that at Shells. We try to put this kind of holistic approach in there to have a better understanding. I made mistakes myself throughout the years. We all have, I'm sure we have. But I want to see, how do we make this better? How do we kind of put time into the players and, you know, and let them go through. They're going to go through an awful lot of problems as teenagers, an awful lot of problems. And that's why I think myself and Gar would be saying, like, coming through 16 and 17, you know, you're kind of hoping they've come through whatever traumas they went through, their injuries, whether it's life problems or any of that. Now you're going to have to learn how to be a big lad here now in relation to football. Football, you got to come up, you got to train, you know, you got to put the time and effort in. And you know, if you're not doing it, well, then we'll drop you. And this is part of the consequence. And this is the big boys' world. And if you're not able to commit to that, we'll always be here to support you in somewhere. But you'll probably have to go to a club who can facilitate you playing.
And as you said, Stephen, it's about gaining knowledge about your players and your team. So what might suit one team won't suit another. So you will, as Larry said before, it's a case by case basis.
Yeah, and I think Roy as well. Again, when we talk about coaching, again we go and talk about, you know, the guys who are at Shelbourne, right? If someone's at Shelbourne, either they or their parents have their eye on playing for Shelbourne's first team. Would I be right in saying that, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, and again, that's different than 90% of the 99% or 95% of the cases, right? So someone goes to Shelbourne, well, the situation is a little bit different there. They're heading towards professional football, right? The game is a lot harder than in terms of playing time, and you have to earn your playing time and stuff like that. And I think there's a natural sort of law about that anyone who goes to Shelbourne would sort of understand that. But it's really pathetic when you see coaches at a lower age group, and a lower level, very much a recreational level, who aren't giving players playing time.
Yeah.
That's a completely different, to me, that's a completely different scenario.
Yeah.
This is why I'm saying there's a sort of a natural law about this, right? That guys who go to Shelbourne and want to play League of Ireland, they know what the score is. They're going in with their eyes open to a certain extent.
I think we were fortunate, lad. I don't mean to put across you at the time, like Shamrock Rovers, Shelbourne have their National League team, but they also have the DDSL.
Yeah.
So we had the two different branches there, where, you know, we never said you're going down to the DDSL, and we never said you're coming up to the League of Ireland. We've always we maintained that you're just going over there for a while. You're coming over here for a while. You know what I mean? We didn't want to put that kind of, you know, we wanted them to be integrated, but we also wanted to be in a position where what we were talking about, that if we felt that a player needed time to step away from League of Ireland football, just for a while, step across, take your time, get yourself back into it. But we also appreciate that not all League of Ireland clubs have that facility.
Yeah, you were lucky to have that situation.
Yeah, and I think it's such it's a huge situation. That's why I was kind of, when I was on that academy, I was saying, look, can we have ourselves a situation that we say Pats tie in with Lure Celtic? So can we have a situation that, you know, there's no transfer needed there for players? Do you know what I mean? There's no transfer needed there for players. That we have this facility that, you know, we're starting with this squad, but say Lord Celtic and say St. Patrick's Athletic, these are the age groups that are Lord Celtic and Pat's National League teams, and these players can cross over at any given time. That way we're keeping them in the system. Do you know what I mean? We're not pushing them away. And there is that support network where it could be something going on in a family background, and there is a more of a high profile, no matter what age group you're playing at in League of Ireland now, there is more of a high profile. You know, all this Snapchat and social media stuff.
There's hundreds of young lads going around school saying they're League of Ireland players.
Yeah. You know what I mean, bro?
Hundreds of them.
Okay, I'm going to leave the last question. I'm going to start with Gary. Gary, we have a question in from David Ryan from Dublin, and he asks, I run an under-16 team and the club is short of space, especially during the winter, as we have to use small-sided astros. I find it hard to coach the 11-a-side needs on for the team on an astro. Could any of the coaches give me some advice? Gary, I'll go with you.
Yeah, like, I think you can always coach whatever your team scenario is. You have things you want to do in the kind of the way they call them, the four functions. So when you have the ball, when you don't have the ball, your transitions then. So when you win it back and you're going to counter attack, or when you've just lost the ball, although you're not on an 11-a-side astro, you can still coach. And I call them principles. People call them different things, where when my team has the ball, we look to do the one or two things when we have the ball there. No matter what the formation is or the size of the grid or whatever, they're just key kind of like I would call them principles anyway, or team values, or whatever you want, label you want to put on them. Really, it's just a label, but you can still coach that in that small astro. So let's just take it that you're this you're a team that likes to have possession and you're quite a strong team at your level, then you can coach what you want in them smaller possession games, whether it's, again, 6v6 with 1 or 2 extra link players, or depending on the size of the astro. That's what I think. Anyway, I think you can always coach your kind of principles all the time, no matter if it's a 1v1 or if it's a 6v6 or 7v7.
Yeah, Larry, what about yourself? You have a nice big astro down there, don't you? So
yeah, we
are one of the blessed ones. How did you get on before in the dark ages when you ran out of light under the lamppost?
Yeah, look, it was always difficult, Roy, and these small astros that get built, and I know a lot of clubs have them and all, but just to me, just a waste. You can't look. Of course, Gary's 100% right. Okay, you can do your basic stuff. You can get your principles of play. You can get how you want players to play. It would take an awful lot of good organisation and good planning to be able to use that small space in a way that takes a chunk out of the 11-a-side game, because he's playing 11-a-side because he's say under 16.
Yeah.
You need very, very good planning skills to take a chunk of the 11-a-side game. Just let's say walking down the right-hand side of the field in your 11-a-side team, your relationship between your fullback and your wide player and your front player, that little triangle down the right-hand side of the field. Now, you could do something that way, but it would take really, really good planning in terms of the basics, how you want your team to work, how you want them to settle on the ball, to be calm, how you want them, whether you want them to attack quickly or whether you want them to slowly build up. All of that can be done in a smaller space. But when you get to a bigger size, really, really what you have to do is you have to be able to draw a picture, draw a square around the part of the field that you want to work in, or identify those players that you need to work on. Say, for example, if you're working in a 40 by 30 yard astro meters, sorry about the yards, sorry about the old money. If you're working on a 40 by 30 yard astro, all right, you can still work on the center of your team. You can still work on your one striker or your two strikers and your two centre midfielders and how they relate to each other. Now, what you do with the rest of your team then is the problem. Yeah. But you can still do that type of coaching, right? Now, I would say probably all of these astros, most of them seem to be about 40 by 30.
Yeah.
So one of the things I used to do on them, and I know it sounds a bit strange, I used to get a mobile goal and stick it in the corner, right? And play, stick it in the corner facing across the pitch and work on near post crossing.
Okay.
So you have 40 yards, so you have a half of the pitch. So you're going down actually along the end line of the pitch to cross, and then you're working on the timing of your front players. Now, 40 by 30 yard, and again, the question is, what do you do with the rest of your team then? Yeah, right, yeah. But it can be done. You can work on the longer relationships in the 11-a-side game, but it has to be taken a chunk at a time.
Yeah, Stephen, have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, I had loads of it. So, and you have to adapt, and there was an awful lot of functional practices that we'd have to we break them into the units, and we'd have our defenders defending, we'd have our midfield players doing technical drills, and then we'd have our strikers joining in with that with a finish at the end of it. It's all very tight, but I always enjoyed it. I think over in Milan they have a thing, they call it the cage. It's it's a small astro. It's literally like a small astro, and they go in, they do their 1v1s, the 2v2s, the 3v3s there. The players absolutely hate it because it's so intense. And what small areas do, it's a great fitness workout for the players, but it's been done with the ball.
Yeah.
And it's creating street football. But if you can create a street football environment, I think as the two boys were saying, have a key focus on a relationship, because what we're saying is there's always this kind of relationships, like with your fullback and your wide player, your two centre halves, your two midfielders, your two strikers. You can break your session into kind of, if you're there for an hour, you can be doing the first part of your session. You want to build that relationship with your strikers and how they can combine with midfield players. Then you can have your midfield players, how can they combine taking it out from the back, and then you can combine and you can work on it. Your last 15 minutes can be defending, where you can have your attackers and your strikers, and it's good for the defending because they have to be compact in the spaces, and it's good for the attackers because they're walking in tight spaces, and they have to do it. So I suppose don't overthink it. Although I probably made that sound very complicated.
Absolutely brilliant point there, Steve. Because like even when I was working in the National League, a huge chunk of time in training, like was spent in 1-on-1s and 2-on-2s, because 1-on-1 is the basis of the game anyway, no matter what level you're playing at, right? And I've never met a group of players from under 8s up to the National League, up to the professionals in the National League, who didn't actually enjoy that element of the game.
Yeah, when
they were doing that. So you'll get buy-in from your players, and there's a lot of things you can work on. You can work on your defending. You can work on your mental attitude. You can work on concentration. You can work on combination play. You can work on pressure and cover, all in the 1-on-1s and 2-on-2 games.
Yeah,
like there's a huge scope there.
And like we're going back to the defending there, right? Sorry, that some of these astro force you to be compact. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're actually forcing your team to be in a defensive shape. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So you're actually getting defensive work done out of it. Do you know what I mean? And the players are actually seeing the benefits of what being compact is. Do you know what I mean? They're closing space, they're providing cover. Do you know what I mean? All this stuff happens naturally. Do you know what I mean? So it's not a bad thing to have that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's genuinely not a bad thing to have it.
So it's that's working probably good habits. It can also, I suppose, work bad habits where maybe it introduced a lot of short passing into your game, and if you're doing that week, month after month over a Christmas period, that the longer game, as we talked about, everything coming out from the back line and all that sort of stuff, that the longer part of your game isn't seen. And I've seen it before with kids who keep looking to play that short pass because that's what they've been used to for the last 4 weeks in training. How do they?
Depends if those games are directional, right? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That like even in small spaces, you know, you can say yes, we want combinations, but you know, even if as they're saying, if it's 40 long, you have 2 teams playing 20 by 20, with the objective is to get it into the striker up there. You know what I mean? So now you're creating short passes with the intent to get the ball up there. I think the problem starts when you say you have to get 4 passes before you can get it up to them. Yeah. I think that's the problem. Yeah. Because kids are now, you know, they're afraid to release the ball early. They think it's the wrong thing to do when it comes to match day. So in a confined area, do you know what I mean? Put them in a small shape and say your objective is to get that into him and then get up and support him. Yeah. You know what I mean? And give them the freedom to do that. You know what I mean? So, like, yeah, if you want to be rondos and you want to be possession-based, grand, but it's not an excuse. You know, you can still have directional with a lot. Now, come here, a long pass is 15 yards. Do you know what I mean? We're not talking about 40 yards lumps down the channels and what have you. Even though today, that's still not a bad ball, by the way, if you're playing with a couple of runny strikers, you know? But at the same time, you can promote it. You can make this as negative as you want, or you can make it as positive as you want, like anything in life.
A little bit of imagination, like, you know, if you have a 40 by 30, everything you need to do can be done in 4-on-4 in terms of the shape, the basic shape of your team, because you're fitting that diamond shape into your 11-a-side team. So what the players do in the diamond shape that is around the ball, they will be the exact same habits that they will use in the 11-a-side. Now, the trick then for the coach is to fit those diamonds into the 11-a-side game, but they will still do everything. Now, again, a little bit of imagination. If you have your team, if you have a panel of 20 and you have a 5-a-side on, you can have the other 10 players outside the area doing some sort of exercise, doing some keepy uppies or whatever, so that the 10 players on the pitch do have realistic spaces to play in. Yeah. All these little things, you know, this is the difference, Roy, between the science and the art of coaching. Right?
I think there could be a book in this question.
Right.
11 asides in short-sided pitches. Gary, you wanted to finish up.
Yeah, I think just to go back to what Stephen said, and well, on the point you made, where the kids are obviously practicing a smaller space so that they'll play these smaller passes. But again, that comes back to where you guide them as a coach. One of the best things I ever heard when I first started coaching is when a player has the ball in possession, you should teach them to look at their longest passing option first, because that's the quickest one that gets you to the goal. If you're a centre back and you win the ball and you look up and their two centre backs are gone somewhere and your centre forward's through and goal, you play that pass, whether you're Barcelona or not, it doesn't matter. You always play that forward, and by looking for that longest pass, you'll see everything in between. So whether, like Stephen said, if that's a 40 meter length box and you put a striker in there, even though that's not 60, 70 yards is in the pitch, you're still teaching that idea in a player's head to look at that pass. And that doesn't matter whether he's 60 yards away or 20 yards away. It's the principle that you always look for that pass and you see everything in between. So it's how you actually coach the players. If you just coach them to look for that short pass, that's all they're going to see, because they won't see beyond that. But it's how you guide them, and the dimensions don't matter then, because you're teaching them. You always look for that pass, see everything in between. It's a big one.
He explained it better than me.
that Cruyff has a lot. That Cruyff has a lot to answer for. That Cruyff quote.
Listen, you've been brilliant, Larry, Stephen, and Gary. I'm going to let you do a little plug at the end. Gary, talk about training 1-to-1. You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, so training 1-to-1, we offer small group sessions. Again, from all ages. Some people think we only work with kind of senior players or professional players, but it's literally 7-8-year-olds all the way up. You'll get us on Instagram at training 1-to-1, and obviously you can touch base with us there.
Okay, Larry, you have 2 books out now.
Now, Roy. Yeah,
this is it. Yeah, you're going for the trilogy.
I'm the James Joyce of Irish football. I am going for the trilogy. Yeah, I am. Hopefully the 3 will be a set. Yeah, it's basically what my books are about teaching kids at the very basic level to make decisions for themselves, to see the game for themselves, to be able to read it, and for the coach to be able to help them to do that. Okay, the books can be got at bigpicturecoachingireland.com.
Brilliant. Stephen, do you want to plug your academy?
No, it's not a plug. I just think the kids there, like it's what Lara's saying, we call it the MDA Academy, and the MDA is moment, decision, action. And that's what we're trying to teach the kids, because all the best players, no matter what levels, in a specific moment, make the right decision and have the technical capacity to do that action. And we try to pass that on to the kids. So we do that down in Cobh, and it's been brilliant. And that's our MDA Academy Cobh.
Brilliant. Lads, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and having you on, and it's great to have different minds bounce off each other. Thanks very much for your time, and for everyone listening and watching, thanks very much.